Hey there, quick little video about installing a crank in a dirt bike engine the right way. And the right way is to use a crank installer or a puller. If you don't use one of these, you could potentially knock your crank out of true. So the only way to do it without doing that really is to put the case halves together with all your bits and then start tightening the screws and working your way around to kind of squeeze the cases together, and that will push the crank into the crank bearings. The problem with that is you're pushing in on the ends of the crank and you're effectively squeezing these weights together. And depending on how tight the bearings are, how tight the fit is, you could knock this crank out of true, and also, how robust, the crank is going to be there. So it's really recommended you don't do that and that you make some sort of a puller or buy one. These can be bought for anywhere between probably $30 to $60 with varying adapters and stuff like this. This one I made years ago, and all it is a piece of aluminum tube with a cap on it and a hole drilled through. And then I just, depending on what engine I'm working on, I make these little shafts. This is just a piece of threaded rod with a nut, and then I'll weld whatever nut on the end of it that fits the crankshaft. So I've got a different one in there right now, and simply just using these pieces of metal to give me a good flat surface to push against. So you're drawing the rod through the tube along with the crank, and you just tighten away and draw the crank in until it's fully seated. Now you notice I'm holding the rod because I don't want to let it fall down, and eventually it could most likely will contact the case, and you could either bend the rod or knock it out of true. You're certainly going to get things in a bind. So see, now it's already contacting. So I'm just going to keep drawing this crank in until it's seated nice and tight. You can see the rod, odds are half the rod is touching the case because it's in the center there. So it's good and tight in there now. We know it's drawn in. And then I can show you this tool a little better. It's like I said, it's just a threaded rod with a nut and a washer out here. And then I have a nut welded onto the rod. That's the appropriate size to thread onto the crank. And that's it. So I can spin this nut off and put this other size in. I got several of these, and if they're quick and easy to make. If you go buy a tool, they come with a few adapters, but you'd be lucky if they fit every engine you're going to run into. So you could either make adapters for the tool you buy, or really, like I said, this is just a piece of aluminum tube. I welded a cap on it, drilled a hole in it. There you go. You can make it out of steel. I had some aluminum laying around, so that's what I used. Easy peasy. And then now our crank is in there, and we didn't do anything to compromise the true on it. Have a good ride, guys.